Hi, this is the cafe racer that I built. I'm going to show you how I wired it, and hopefully it can help you on your build. I started off with a 12-volt lithium-ion battery. Next, you want to ground the battery to the frame. The first thing I attached to my battery was the starter solenoid, which is then directly connected to the starter motor. The starter motor was already grounded to the engine. Next, I used a 20 amp inline fuse to connect my battery to a keyed switch. I then used a momentary switch to help start my engine. This is only half of the ignition system, so I'm going to show you how I wired up the other half. It involves the engine. I used an 82 Honda CM450E engine. It uses CDI ignition. It stands for capacitive discharge ignition. This part was original to the bike. It's then connected to an ignition coil, which is further attached to a pair of spark plugs. As well, the engine kill switch is attached to the CDI module. So after wiring up all these components, the engine now runs. Moving on, I'll show you how I wired up the lights and accessories. I used a latching switch, which is further connected to a fuse box, serving as a common node for my lighting and accessories. I first wired up my headlight. It had 3 wires coming out of it. The first was a high beam signal, the second was a low beam signal, and the third was a ground cable. And I installed a switch which enabled me to choose between the 2 settings. So the next thing I did was I wired up the turn signals. It starts with wiring up a turn signal relay to my fuse box. The relay is then attached to a turn signal switch. From this switch, we connect the turn signals as shown. Each of the 4 turn signal lights has 2 wires coming out of them. One is the signal and one is the ground. I then connected a horn switch, which is then attached to a horn. The last light that I set up was my tail light. It had 3 wires coming out of it. The first went to ground, the second one was for power to keep it on at all times, and the last one was the signal wire from your braking switches, namely the front handbrake and the rear foot brake. When either of these switches close, it sends more current to the taillight, making it glow brighter. This indicates that you're braking. Jumping right along, I'll show you how I wired up the charging system. I used a solid state regulator rectifier. It had 6 wires coming out of it. The 3 yellow wires were connected directly to the motor, whereas the other 3 are connected as shown. And finally, I wired up my last component, the speedometer. I had a few wires coming out of it. 2 of the wires connected to the turn signals, 1 of the wires connected to the high beam signal, and I connected 1 last wire for the Speedo's backlight. There were a couple wires remaining, namely the neutral indicator light. I didn't find it fully necessary for myself, but if you want to wire it up, there are a couple wires coming out of the engine. which should give you that neutral signal. So I'm going to show you a few things working. If I turn this to the right, you'll notice my accessories turn on, and as well, this is my ignition, momentary ignition switch. So if I were to press this, you'll hear my motor trying to start. This is my accessory switch, so if I press this button, you'll notice that my accessories turn off. But I'll keep them on for this demonstration. Here is my high beam, low beam. I'm not sure if you could see that fully. High beam, low beam. You'll notice that as I switch my high beam on, that the high beam light turns on. If I turn signals, if I turn them on, you'll notice my turn signals are flashing. It's flashing. And it's flashing back here as well. Turning it off, if I turn the other way, as well as that's working. Let's turn it off. My horn. Ooh, ouch. Yeah, this is my engine kill switch. So, off, on. As well, you'll notice that if I press my brake switches, this will actually glow brighter. So, let me show you that. Ooh, I'm not sure how I'm going to show you that. Or, I'm going to press that with my right hand, and hopefully it will turn on. Oops. There it is. It's glowing brighter. Yeah, and the front handbrake does the same. So, yeah, so that's it working. And that is it. That's how I wired up my Cafe Racer. I posted in the video description below every electrical component that I purchased during the electrical wiring process of my Cafe Racer. So feel free to check that out. And thank you for watching. I hope you found value in this video.